Okay, want to welcome everybody to Cabana Home. Thank you for coming out on Sunday morning to have breakfast with us. Cabana Home is a home furnishing store, but we're also interior designers, and one of the most fun things we get to do is open the store up to nonprofits and to other events like today. So I'm so happy you're here. Thanks for coming out and joining us on Sunday morning. Thank you. So we're obviously here for Esteban Ramirez, also known as Steve Ramirez, but we've known Steve and Scott for several years and just absolutely love getting to know them and getting to know Steve's music. Steve started playing the piano at 10 years old and is still at it. He's been composing music from a very early age, and today this is the beginning of the fourth album. He's produced 3 albums so far. This one, Serenade to the Moon, a book of poetry. So it's kind of unusual to have not only a pianist, but somebody who's talented enough to produce a book and the poetry of the book. So he's going to be going back and forth between the two today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Esteban Ramirez, our friend and artist. But not a finger.
Okay. It felt like Price is Right. I won! I got called! I got called up! Isn't this a cool poetry stand? Yeah. These things look like antennas for a little ladybug. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I'm really excited about what I'm going to share with you because I think it's a unique project. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it in a minute, but first I'd like to again thank Steve Thompson and Caroline Thompson, who are founders of Cabana Home, for their graciousness and, of course, your hospitality and let me use this space for the release of my poetry book. So thank you, Steve. And Caroline, who's not here, but she sends her best. And then, of course, secondly, I want to thank all of you for taking time out to come on Sunday and listen to this guy who is a poet and plays the piano. Like, what is that about? So I'm going to give you some context before I start reading my poetry and sharing my music with you. So let me get my little show and tell. Okay, so this is my first album, Serenade to the Moon. And it's all romantic piano solo music. You know, it's the kind of music where on a Sunday morning, you have your hot cup of coffee, you want some background music that's just kind of melodic and unobtrusive. That's Serenade to the Moon. Or if you have some dinner guests and you want to like enjoy the conversation with them, you just play this album in the background and it's like, wow, this is beautiful music. Or if you have a crying baby and you're trying to get that baby to go to sleep, you just say, Alexa, please play Serenade to the Moon by Esteban Ramirez, and that baby will be like this. So it's very relaxing music. Now, there's 13 pieces in here, and each of these pieces has this source of inspiration or motivation or visualization. And for a while now, I've said, you know, and I don't know where this idea came from. Wouldn't it be really cool to write a poem for each piece and inspired by that piece? So COVID happened. We had a lot of time on our hands. And I said, now's the time. And I started writing. I literally would turn on the album, and I had the laptop on my lap, and I would start writing inspired by this poem, or by the music. So, voila, Serenade to the Moon, the poetry book, was birthed. And I didn't want to stop there. I wanted to illustrate it. So it's kind of like a quasi coffee table book, art book, poetry book. And I worked with this artificial intelligence software, which is called Dolly 2. And I said, and I know it's controversial, artificial intelligence, but I said, you know what, let me just try it. And it produced these amazing illustrations. Some of you have seen them on the slideshow as they're going. And I know I'm biased, but I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So that is the context of what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I am going to be playing 4 pieces for you, and reading 4 poems, and then giving you a little context about each poem before them. And this first poem is called Dancing Shadows, which takes me back to being a little kid in El Paso, Texas. Who knows what mulberry trees are? Okay, big giant leaves. In El Paso, they're all over the place. I would go as a little kid in the summertime into the park, and I want to take a break, and I'd lie down underneath the mulberry tree. And I'd look at the branches and the leaves, and the summer breeze would move the leaves back and forth. And then the sunbeams would somehow manage to find their way onto my eyelids. And I'd close my eyes, and I would see these shadows dancing on my eyelids. Of course, being a little creative kid, I really loved it. So when I was writing this piece, Dancing Shadows, it reminded me a lot about being that little kid underneath a mulberry tree. And that is where we began. The leaves on the mulberry tree are greener than my green Crayola. Greener than the unpickled jalapeno my father likes to eat. Or the buttered peas my mother made for lunch today. The leaves flutter up and down like a row of dark socks on a crowded summer clothesline, dancing to the thumping of the city's desert wind, playing their favorite song. I close my eyes under the tree, where I lie on grass that wrestles with knotweed, spurge, and dandelions. All of them more yellow than green. All of them thirsty, but not the tree. The flailing leaves move back and forth to let the sun rays ride their ridges, landing hand puppets on my eyes of dancing shadows and thunder clouds. And as the clock ticks through this school-free summer, I smile, ooh, and ah at how the shadows dance in the light of day, but in the blink of an eye scatter away. And now the piece that inspired this poem. boy, that train really added something to it. Yeah.
Was your train to
I actually coordinated that. That train is very wistful. My music is very wistful. It's very relaxing. And I tried to get that sensibility into the poetry. It's not complicated poetry. I like things to be really simple and nice and relaxing, and it calms my anxiety. Okay, in my backyard, I have salvia plants. I have star lavender. I have sage, and when they're blooming, the butterfly comes in. And butterflies are so mesmerizing, right? Very hypnotic. I just look at them. And that's what this next poem is about. It's called Butterfly Garden. You flutter about with your wings outstretched, taking your time to smell the flowers that grow in my garden. My blooming coyote mint, my crimson columbine, my autumn sage and milkweed. Like a toddler learning to walk, you teeter and you totter into a world of colors and scents and nectar and sun with a toothless smile, giggling at the sight of flowers that await your hugs and kisses. You come in ones and twos, and if I'm lucky, sometimes threes. People know you by name. Monarch, Painted Lady, Little Sulphur, but I only know you by yellows and greens and blues and browns and fiery orange. You lift my spirits up like the wind lifts a kite that soars into the sky. Like a heavy rain on a mountain brush fire, you douse the troubles of my day. You quench my thirst like a glass of ice-cold lemonade at the top of a hot summer's day. Who are you, sweet butterfly? Spirit? Friend? Wise old soul? A freak of nature? A happy accident? We all seek the Holy Grail, going busily from day to day, drive to work, sign the papers, feed the children, pay the tax man, buy the groceries. It never ends. But you dance from flower to flower, unhurried, unworried, untroubled by tomorrow, only embracing your today. From the confines of your cocoon, you broke free to explore your world from dawn until dusk, to teach me the simplest of lessons. Sometimes it's best to be just like you. That inspired this poem. Aren't butterflies fun? Did you see the monarch? Wasn't the monarch pretty? I love that monarch. So I was all of 23 years old, graduated from college, and I moved to Indio, California. Don't ask. It's a long story. For those of you who don't know where Indio is, it's about 30-minute drive southwest of Palm Springs. And at the time, I didn't even know Palm Springs was a thing. But I had very little money to my name. In my bank account, probably in the high 3 digits. I had a credit card, which was good, carried me through from paycheck to paycheck. But my first job was there, and I was working for a shopping center in the marketing department, trying to get people to shop. And I hate shopping. So go figure. Anyway, I've since learned the error of my ways. I found this studio apartment in a dusty, kind of crusty, one-level apartment complex. And that studio apartment had at the far end 2 sliding glass doors. Those were my only windows. I had a bed. I had a coffee table. And I had a really out-of-tune upright spinet piano that a friend of mine loaned me. I got the bed for free because at the shopping center, a store went bankrupt. And they just said, take it. And my back still hurts because it was display model. Anyway, so I'm lying in bed one night, and there's this full moon. This beautiful, gorgeous, fall moon. What do they call it? One of those harvest moons. Gold and yellow, and there's a little spattering of stars around it. And then there was these 2 palm trees that were right outside of my sliding glass doors, and the moonlight silhouetted them. And I was just looking at this scene and just mesmerized, and I said, I have to capture this moment in music. I got off my bed because I didn't have a chair. I went to the piano, and I wrote a love song to the moon. And that became the title track to my album, Serenade to the Moon, and of course, to the poetry book, Serenade to the Moon, the poetry book. And this is how the poem goes. Whisper in my ear, gentle moon. Let your beams of gold unwind. Touch me with your flawless glow like the caress of a lover's hand on mine. Blanket me with your warmth under the stars on this cloudless night. Lay your halo on my chest while I gaze into your candlelight. Call my name till it echoes and wakes the tulips from their sleep. Fill me with their scent, your bouquet for me to keep. Let me run with the wolves and howl from the highest mountain to keep your lair and keep the cold from lashing. Let me beg the distant sun to stay away for one more day, to paint you in the night sky in the style of Monet. that crying baby is going to fall asleep.
If they don't, can we bring them to your house?
Yes. Okay, so how many of you been to a Tupperware party? Or better yet, a candlelight party? You know, where you get those really beautiful, you can zip them, you can lock them, you can twirl them, the beautiful candles, the mirrors behind them. Well, this is going to be the Tupperware portion of the afternoon. What no home should be without. Okay, so let me tell you about the book. Some of you already have your copy. Thank you so much for your support. It's a beautiful book. I know I'm biased, but for those of you who have children, this is my child. Hard copy, a great addition to your coffee book collection on your table. If you have a guest bedroom, a nice little book to leave on the nightstand so that when they're trying to think of one night, what should I talk to my host about tomorrow? They can talk about the book. You go over to someone's house, it's like, oh God, we already talked for 4 hours. What do we talk about tomorrow? This is something that you can talk about. Hey, Tim, that's a wonderful poetry book. Who is it? Well, I'm glad you asked. If you know somebody who's young, this is a family-friendly book, and you want to expose them to poetry. My poetry is not complicated. If you want to expose them to art and artificial intelligence, these kids are growing up around this. A great way to introduce the arts to your kids. So think about that. Now, I was so inspired. The book will tell you a lot more because there's a foreword that tells you how I worked with artificial intelligence. It's pretty amazing. But I was so inspired. I like to write thank you notes. So, I had a little pin, old school, little note, and then put it in an envelope, put a stamp, and actually take it to the post office instead of email. It's just so much warmer. So I made note cards from some of the illustrations, and let me show them to you. Remember Tupperware? Isn't that beautiful? Look at the tulips. That makes me happy, and they're blank inside. So you can write your personal note. And what's amazing is that these illustrations are unique to this poetry book. You won't find them anywhere else. Look at the butterfly garden. Oh my God. This is one of my favorites. I like happy colors. And when I worked with Dolly 2, the artificial intelligence software, I said, Dolly, give me something happy, colorful in the garden. And poof. Well, this was like try number 35, but I got there. Okay, look at, of course, we all live in the beachside community. A seashell on the sunset. And there's a poem. This is from the poem Evening Breeze. And the line from this poem goes, if I were to visit heaven, I would find a seashell with magnificent colors and listen to it sing. Isn't that pretty? I know I wrote it. All right. So I told you about my piano album. My second album, these are now becoming collector's items, believe it or not. So my second album is piano with cello. I'm working on a poetry for this one too. My third album is piano, cello, oboe, and violin. So if you like the ensemble sound, this is the one to get. Okay, I didn't bring display items, but there's more. I have 2 coffee cups. One of them has the little boy under the one of them has the seashell, and it has a little line of poetry between the pictures, and the other one has tulips with a line of poetry. So you could be at home in the morning sipping a hot cup of coffee with Esteban's illustrations, his poetry, and having Alexa play my music, and it'd be like I'm stalking you. You're getting the whole Esteban 3D experience. All right, they'll be out in the courtyard. I will be there. I would be honored, of course, to sign your poetry book or whatever it is that you want signed, if you want me to, of course. But this concludes the Tupperware portion of the afternoon. All right, so let's go to the last poem of the afternoon. This one's called A Stroll with Pachelbel. how in the world do you write a poem about a stroll with Pachelbel? So let me first tell you about the piece. So I'm writing this piece, and then I stumble into this variation of Johann Pachelbel's Canon in D. For those of you who know Baroque music, it's a very popular refrain. So I took a variation of that refrain and incorporated it into my music. And I was thinking, how do I write a poem about a stroll with Pachelbel? So I looked up other poets and I read their poetry. I was trying to get ideas, and I finally found one. And this poem became a poem about a spider. And this spider was not any ordinary spider. It was a spider that wove musical webs. And it had 10 legs that were emblematic of my 10 fingers at the piano. And that's all the context I'm going to give you. A spider on a morning stroll went about weaving a musical web on a black and white colored lattice. 88 slats to be exact if you're counting. 9 hours of sleep, a couple of feel-good dreams. It caressed, palpitated, tapped, stroked, and scurried along the mostly white slats, spinning out harmonious, sometimes imperfect silk lines from corner to corner. Funny though, one never knows where this 10-legged spider will go. Sauntering is its superpower. Today it stumbled on a lone black spline between G natural and A natural, the white ones. As it fell through the gap between two boards on an old farmhouse trellis, casting an unexpected familiar refrain that sounded a lot like Canon in D by Johann Pachelbel. Sometimes those accidental missteps result in an interesting tangle, and like a good spider threading its daily labyrinth, it knows just how to weave those melodic lines together. Even though today's web was similar to Johann's, as any spider knows, they're different once you make your way around them. And so I followed it, as I often do when this spider takes its daily stroll, enjoying this familiar Baroque refrain that had now been caught in today's morning web. And now the piece that inspired it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.